Howdy, folks. Radical Russ, your red state refugee here, and I've got to take a moment to rant about how the United States has become a gerontocracy. Gerontocracy means government by the elderly, and if you've seen the recent video of Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell needing a reboot at a recent speaking event, you might question if that's a good idea.
That's okay. What are your thoughts on running for re-election in 2026?
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026?
That's
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026? All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator.
That's hard to watch, and it's the second time in as many months as we've had to watch it. White House doctors say he's fine, but we've also heard from a White House doctor that the former guy, the disgraced, twice impeached, 4 times indicted, 1,000 times sued, civilly liable, mobbed up criminal, con man, racist, rapist, compulsively lying, charity thieving, daughter lusting, oath betraying Putin puppet, is actually 6'3", 215 pounds, like Muhammad Ali in his prime. Right. So forgive me if I'm not a sanguine on whether the tortoise from Kentucky is of sound mind to run our government. But McConnell is only the 4th oldest U.S. senator. That title goes to Senator Dianne Feinstein from California. She's 90 years old and, like McConnell, has had some spells of late where her staff have had to help her cast a vote. In a decent Washington, D.C., Di-Fi would retire so that Democratic California could replace her with a younger Democrat. But, you see, Di-Fi is the ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Mitch McConnell and the Republicans are refusing to agree to let Democrats replace her. Without her vote, even if it's coached by her staff, President Biden can't get his judicial picks through. Another 90-year-old in the U.S. Senate is Chuck Grassley. He was first elected to the U.S. Senate from Iowa when Ronald Reagan was elected president. And at times, he has had his little mental breakdowns at work as well. It's not just in the Senate. Representative Steny Hoyer, the Democrat from Maryland, also went to Washington in 1981 with Chuck Grassley. He's the House Minority Leader, the number 2 Democrat in the House, and he's 84 years old. There are also 2 more representatives in Congress who were elected all the way back in 1981. Representative Hal Rogers, Republican from Kentucky, he's 86 years old, and Representative Chris Smith, Republican from New Jersey, he's 70 years old. In the number 3 leadership position for Democrats is Representative Jim Clyburn from South Carolina, who's age 83. Clyburn, you may remember, was instrumental in securing the presidential nomination for now 81-year-old Joe Biden. And until recently, the leader of the Democrats in the House was Speaker Nancy Pelosi, age 83. This gives us a Senate where the average age is almost 64 years old and a House where the average age is about 58. That's with 2 senators over age 90 and another 6 who were born before World War II ended. In the House, we've got 18 members of Congress born in the Big Band era. This gives us our gerontocracy in Washington, D.C., where about 1/3 of the decision-making power over cybersecurity, social media, and artificial intelligence rests with the folks who need their grandkids' help to set up a Gmail account. Some people think that we should have term limits. But critics contend that term limits artificially preclude voters from choosing the candidate they prefer, and that long-serving members provide some institutional memory. Others say we should have a mandatory retirement age for Congress. I think that's ageist because some of those old folks are still sharp as a tack and beloved by their constituents. But if one side of Capitol Hill is forbidden to stay in office more than 2 terms, why should the other side of Capitol Hill get to stay in office for a lifetime? Where critics see institutional memory, I see lifetime investments for big money super PACs. Where critics see artificially limiting voter choices, I see giving bought-off members of Congress a home field advantage every election. I propose that we enact a federal term limits amendment that limits a person to 3 terms or 18 years, whichever is less. And I wouldn't limit that to Congress either. Let's repeal the 26th Amendment and give the president 3 terms. Shouldn't a president have as much time to get it right as we give a kid in public school? Under my term limits amendment, you could be a congressman for 6 years, but then you got to move up or move out. You could then be a senator for 18 years, but then you got to move up or move out. Then you can be president for 12 years. Same thing for judges. You can spend 18 years at the district court, but then you got to move up and move out. Or 18 years at the appeals court, then you got to move up or move out. And then 18 years at the Supreme Court. I think term limits is something we can get the American people behind. Well over 4 out of 5 Americans support congressional term limits, Republicans and Democrats alike. As for the courts, 2/3 of Americans want term limits, though that's 4 out of 5 Democrats and just a slight majority of Republicans. I imagine that's because they like the current 6-3 Supreme Court just the way it is. Still, I think we could get 3/4 of the states to ratify a term limits amendment. Which brings us to the roadblock in enacting term limits for the ancient members of Congress. 2/3 of the ancient members of Congress would have to propose it. And why would they vote to end their own careers? Thankfully, the Constitution provides a way for us to propose an amendment. If 2/3 of the states call for a constitutional convention under Article 5, Congress must allow for the proposal of new amendments. The problem with that route is that the convention would allow for amendments, plural, with no way of limiting the proposals to just term limits. The states could propose to abolish the income tax, or rescind the Second Amendment, or declare only tall people get to vote. I mean, there's literally no limit to what could be proposed. There's also no defined mechanism in the Constitution for how that constitutional convention is organized. Since it's never happened in our history, we'd be making up the process as we go along. And with each state having essentially one vote, sparse, rural, demographically white states would have disproportionate power in setting the agenda. Still, despite its risks, I think an Article 5 convention for the purpose of proposing term limits is worth it. 38 states would have to ratify any amendment, and I think there are at least 13 sufficiently blue states to block anything crazy the red states might propose. I'm Radical Russ, and that's the rant.